Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a genuinely chilling systemic risk analysis document. It details the rapid chronological collapse of our global digital infrastructure. We rely on the internet to stream our favorite shows, check our emails, do literally everything. But what actually happens when the very fabric of our digital world just unravels? Well, we're going to walk through a structured hour-by-hour timeline of exactly what goes down when the data completely stops flowing.
Picture this. You wake up, grab your phone, and it's just not updating. Naturally, you go and restart the router, right? But that little red light just stays on. You probably shrug it off, leave the house, and head over to the gas station, only to find out they can't process your card. No big deal, you go to an ATM, but it's completely dead. What feels like a temporary, maybe 10-minute glitch is actually the beginning of the greatest collapse in modern history.
Okay, let's dive into this official briefing from June 2026. This document fundamentally redefines how we need to view the internet. It explicitly states that the web is no longer just an optional service or some entertainment layer. It has literally evolved into the central nervous system of human civilization. Everything from the code that tells a milk delivery truck exactly where to unload to the banking system validating that you actually have the funds to buy that milk relies entirely on this exact nervous system.
And this brings us to a massive realization, a core thesis of the document. There is a critical distinction between a power failure and an internet failure. While a lack of power removes the capacity to execute, the physical lights go out, a lack of internet removes the capacity to coordinate. Without the flow of data, society doesn't just lose its light, it loses its collective memory, its financial identity, and the ability to synchronize even the absolute basic logistics of human survival.
So let's see how this builds, starting literally at second zero. We're looking at invisible failures in the internet's core address systems, specifically BGP and DNS. Essentially, computers instantly forget how to find each other. Millions of ping requests go completely unanswered. In a matter of seconds, algorithmic high-frequency trading on the stock markets freezes entirely, locking up trillions of dollars in assets. And all those smart, internet-connected devices in our homes and factories, they instantly turn into electronic bricks, no way around it.
10 minutes in, what's everyone doing? The entire global population is furiously unplugging and replugging their routers. Uncertainty really begins to dominate households. At the same time, cloud-based businesses, software as a service, or SaaS companies are forced to completely shut down their operations globally. And on a personal level, well, a lack of social media to validate reality sparks the very first wave of collective anxiety and informational isolation. It's kind of eerie when you think about it.
By the 1 hour mark, the paralysis hits the physical world in a very, very real way. We're talking about the end of money as we know it. Point-of-sale terminals and credit card networks completely die. Massive lines instantly form at supermarkets and gas stations. Physical cash, which, let's be honest, is already incredibly scarce in our highly digitized economy, suddenly becomes the only acceptable medium of exchange. The global financial system essentially enters an induced coma.
Now the crisis really escalates as we move into hours 1 through 6. We enter a period of entirely fragmented communication. Internet calling, like VoIP, and all your messaging apps go completely dark. People start to panic and try to make standard analog cellular voice calls. But here's the catch: the 4G and 5G networks instantly crash from the sheer overload. Meanwhile, the command and control of global logistics, all those trucks, ships, and planes, is totally lost because their satellite tracking actually relies on terrestrial servers to process the data.
Moving into hours 6 to 12, massive corporations desperately attempt to implement their business continuity plans. They try falling back on manual mode, paper and radio. But there's a massive oversight here. Our modern workforce has absolutely zero training for manual analog operations. Because of this, the crucial just-in-time delivery system, which the document notes is our greatest triumph but also our absolute greatest weakness, completely collapses at the source. There will literally be no food on the shelves within 48 hours.
Then, the first night falls. The digital silence is accompanied by a complete information vacuum. Official news portals just vanish. There are no streaming broadcasts. And in this void, rumors and heavy disinformation begin to spread like wildfire by word of mouth. The source analysis points out that this specific type of isolation transforms standard anxiety into paralyzing fear, and in many cases, outright defensive aggression. Cities get darker, not from a lack of power, but from a profound lack of connection.
Now as we cross into day 2, notice how the pacing completely shifts. We move from digital glitches to intense physical, institutional pressure. This is the day of desynchronization. People physically rush the banks in massive droves to get their money out. But remember, paper money is king, and nobody has enough of it. Even worse, The bank tellers cannot access the digital balances. It simply doesn't matter how much money you actually have in the bank. Technical insolvency takes over, rendering withdrawals entirely impossible. Everything you own digitally is locked behind a door that no longer has a key.
Let's look at this sector breakdown because it reveals a catastrophic domino effect across society. Take the health sector, for example. Modern hospitals are essentially giant data terminals. Without cloud records, they are thrown straight back to 1950s medicine, but they're burdened with 2026 demand. And perhaps the most terrifying metric in this entire breakdown, emergency response dispatch systems, like 911, become so incredibly overloaded that their response times increase by a staggering 500%. 500! By the third day, the crisis goes from being an economic disaster to a full-on existential one. The basic infrastructure we completely take for granted begins to fail. Smart grids, which manage our water and electricity, simply cannot operate without their data layers. Governments are forced to declare a state of emergency. To communicate with the public, they have to revert to AM/FM radio and physical loudspeakers. The military is actually deployed to the streets, not for war, but just for basic physical coordination.
What we're really tracking here is a predictable timeline of psychological degradation. Humanity moves through these phases like clockwork. For the first 12 hours, there's massive denial. Everyone just expects an immediate fix. Between 12 and 36 hours, this shifts to a frenzied physical search for information, as people flood into urban centers looking for answers. But after 48 hours, the reality really sets in. Society enters a phase of pure adaptation or conflict, where the absolute priority becomes acquiring physical resources like food, water, and fuel just to protect the family unit. It's essentially a collective digital withdrawal syndrome.
The source document outlines that by the end of this 72-hour window, the grand scale of our globalized world shrinks entirely. Without digital logistics, long-distance travel and global supply chains just vanish into thin air. You're no longer a citizen of the internet or even of your country in a practical day-to-day sense. Society totally abandons the global scale. Your immediate, physical, local community becomes absolutely everything that is left. To wrap up this explainer, the analysis leaves us with a stark, undeniable warning. The internet is an absolute miracle of human engineering, for sure, but it is a profoundly fragile one, and we do not have an analog plan B. So, the next time your connection drops for 5 minutes, don't complain. Be thankful it came back, because as this timeline clearly shows, if it ever fails to return within 72 hours, the world you know will simply cease to exist. So what steps are you taking today to ensure you aren't completely helpless when the digital nervous system goes dark?